I'm Marty Wilkinson with the PeaceGiver Project. You can look us up on PeaceGiverProject.com or same Instagram handle, PeaceGiver Project, or obviously on Facebook. This is my guest who will be interviewing me, Katie Hansen. This is our second episode, and I am a reformed abuser and a recovering alcoholic. And Katie has been a victim of domestic abuse. Sounds like in several different forms. And basically we're going through the process of interviewing. She's interviewing me. We're basically having a dialogue back and forth to peel back some of the layers of abuse, really in all of its forms. She'll be asking me questions from her experience with abuse, and I'll be answering them from mine. And so we'll go ahead and get started with our first line of questioning. I will say, prior to asking the question, Katie will give a little background as to why she's asking the question, different parts of her story, and as you might imagine, a lot of the subject matter is pretty sensitive, and it still hurts. At least I only speaking for myself, it still hurts, and even the things that have healed up, we're peeling back some of the layers because we want to help people heal. We want to help people who both victims and abusers give hope, give a voice, and give them the understanding that you actually can get better. Usually not together, but you can get better. But again, we want to, before we go down that road, we'll go further into exploring why and ask some of the questions that many of you probably want to know the answer to, but you'll probably never get.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, are you ready?
Sure.
For some more questions?
Sure.
Okay, so in my situation or my relationship, I worked really hard to be able to achieve what I wanted to. So a little backstory, my oldest daughter was not my ex-husband's child. We ended up having a daughter together, and he fulfilled, I guess, the role of father for my oldest daughter. So I worked really, really hard. However, I found that when I achieved something very well for myself, or that would help me grow as a person, financially, mentally, whatever, I was broken down and manipulated to believe that it wasn't enough, or he would just ruin it all for me, right? So he would, I can't think of the word, but basically destroy it in every form.
Yeah.
And I want to understand why.
If we're going to give it a name, I believe that would probably fall under emotional abuse. And it's interesting, the parallels. Not in this case, it would surprise me if all the cases were the same. In this case, it is. My ex is gifted in network or multi-level marketing. She's very good at it. And, she's made several hundred, she's done very well for herself in the past. And she was while we were together, and she was, she's very good at it. She's, she's terrific at it. And when she would achieve, it's interesting because we were both very egotistical. Probably both had low self-esteem because while she was doing that, she would put me down. And so the abuse was flowing both ways there. Again, only speaking for myself though, and what I did and why I did it. When she would make these achievements, and instead of being excited for her because I had such a fragile ego, everything that I did basically was to feed my ego or to protect it. So I saw it as a threat. If she was achieving something, then I perceived that as a threat, and was a threat to my ego, because obviously if she was doing better, then naturally that was, if her light was shining brighter, then obviously that makes mine dimmer, which is not real, That's a lie. It's total bullshit. But that's how I processed it. Today I would like to think it's, I've done a lot of work. I would want to be the biggest cheerleader for my partner, but that's not where I was. Everything was about protecting that ego. So I would put her down. And even if it was a really, really significant promotion or whatever it was, like something that she should have been beaming over, this is really sad. She should have been celebrated. Instead of celebrating her, I made it sound like it wasn't that big of a deal. And it was a big deal. The things that she did, it was a big deal. And I made it sound less than, because in my mind at the time, I thought, well, if she's achieving, then that must make me a loser. I'm not a good provider. I'm not this, I'm not that. And those insecurities that I had would haunt me. And we didn't operate like a team from the get anyways. We just didn't, in that regard. We didn't, and this was my second marriage. And we just didn't operate like a team, ever, in that way. And in this, at least in this regard, I would take ownership on that one, because I really should have been supportive of her instead of tearing her down, because all I was considering was that. I never considered how it affected her self-esteem. I never considered how it may affect her perception of how lovable she was. Having been on the reverse side of that, I thought, well, shit, am I not lovable? Why are they not supporting me? Am I not worth it? And I took that on. That's a lie too. It's not true. But that's the way I was thinking, and it wouldn't surprise me if she had some of those thoughts and feelings, and that weighs on me. That weighs on me because that's just, as I'm thinking about it now, that's just one more betrayal. That not only that lack of, it wasn't just a lack of support, but going out of my way to diminish an accomplishment of hers is a betrayal. I betrayed her because I was supposed to be there to protect her, and vice versa. That's really what couples, that's part of, ideally, the way a marriage is supposed to function. But that's not the way we were functioning. Certainly not the way I was functioning. But again, it goes back to everything was about me. And I suspect when she did that to me, it was just all about her. And it wasn't like that 100% of the time. Sometimes we were supportive of each other. Sometimes we would speak amazingly about each other. But they were fleeting. And today, it would surprise me if either one of us remembered those times, because it wasn't always like that. But speaking for myself, I don't think of that. I just think of the garbage, the times where I was abusive to her, the times when she's been abusive to me, and that, sadly, that eclipses any of the good that may have been there, and it makes it really hard to focus on any bright spots.
I agree.
Yeah.
So then, going into the same type of thing, why? So in my situation, I like to think I was very supportive. I encouraged everything. I was the biggest cheerleader. I was there for everything that I could be. I remember he joined a rec league football team, and I was at every game. I tried to do everything I could on my side. But why was that never enough? Why is same kind of question, but why was it that I was putting 110% in and I was showing him everything I wanted in return but didn't get? So why was that not good enough for him?
In my case, again, I can only speak for myself. In my case, because this actually, I might be able to attribute to some of the trauma that I experienced as a teenager. That because I'd been betrayed and had a fractured self-worth severely. Like I had a hard time thinking that I was lovable or worth anything. I couldn't really accept it, which is interesting, now that I think about it in this context. It's been easy for me to think about in terms of addiction and also in terms of, this abuse, the physical abuse, because that was really shameful. And because I felt so horrible about myself, it got to the point where I could not accept love. Because I felt so horrible, I didn't feel worthy of being loved by anybody, not even my own mom. I didn't feel, I mentioned this in a recent video, I didn't feel worthy of being loved by my own children. So I couldn't receive it. It was never about them. As hard as my mother even wanted to love on me, I couldn't accept it. As hard as my ex may have wanted to love on me, I couldn't receive it because I didn't feel worthy of it. It was my stuff, and I can only imagine how it must have felt for anybody in my life. Regarding my ex, I can only imagine that it was frustrating to want someone to feel love from you, but they can't. Not because they don't want to, because I was starving for love. I was starving for it, but I couldn't receive it because I just didn't feel worthy of it at all. I didn't feel like I was worth loving. It had nothing to do with her ever. I suspect that's probably pretty universal. It would surprise me that in your case, can't speak for him, it would surprise me if it had anything to do with you. Every book that I've ever read, anything I've ever listened to on it, would suggest that it was never about you. It was about somebody that was hurting really badly inside that didn't feel worthy of what you were trying to give them.
So if it didn't have anything to do about me, right? It was all internalized for him, or in your situation for you.
Right.
Why was it okay then to swap it and make it about me? So, and the way that I say that is the control aspect, right? So you can't own it or accept it because you don't know how, basically, to accept the love.
Right.
But why is it okay to then turn it all around and control or manipulate me and make it all about me in a bad way? Does that make sense?
That does. Again, speaking to my own story, because I'm only an expert on my story, probably in no other area. That is because I was looking for something to feed my ego, even if it was artificial, even if it was generated by me. When I say artificial, generated by me, it was filler. It wasn't real. I didn't actually get any fulfillment out of making it about her, making hurtful events about her. I didn't get any benefit from that. It didn't fill my cup. All it did was shifted the attention away from the garbage. It shifted the attention of how horrible I felt about myself to her. Because I wanted, there's the saying, hurt people hurt people. There's a lot of truth there, because it's not so much that don't know that I would say I was a hateful person, but I wanted to exert some control somewhere, because I felt like my life was out of control. I didn't feel like I had control anywhere. I didn't feel like I was lovable. And so, any bad event so ugly. Instead of making it a positive by being uplifting, instead of raising myself up to feel good about me, I would put her down. It wasn't a matter of elevating myself to be a better version of me. It was about pushing her down so she had a lower vision of her. Ugly, super ugly, doesn't speak very well of me. Or people who are abusive in general. Granted, I don't know that it's universal, but it would actually kind of surprise me if it wasn't. Had nothing to do with, I had to somehow feel like I had some sort of superiority over something.
It's like a power.
Well, yeah, I wanted to control something, and I couldn't control how. I didn't feel like I could control how amazing I felt, so I wanted to control how horrible she felt. So my station was somehow elevated above hers. She had to be pushed down below me. Otherwise, I couldn't objectify her anymore. That means I couldn't abuse anymore. And that's not very flattering. It's pretty ugly, but that's true.
Okay. So, a little more. I have 2 children, obviously. At the time, I think she was like 5 or 6, and a 2-year-old maybe. I think that's about right. But obviously, when you have children, your children are your world, right?
Yeah.
Or that's
how
I view it. But he never wanted to interact with my children unless I was there or other people were there or whatever. And I look at it as it was a show, right? But he never wanted to do anything with them when it was just us at home. And I never understood why you wouldn't want to be there in your kids' lives when they're begging or asking you to be, and they don't, and he didn't want to be.
Yeah, I think that's fairly deep. It's very deep. Mm-hmm. I think I didn't understand what unconditional love was until just a couple years ago. I think women get it more intuitively than men do, much more naturally. I think a lot of it has to do with ego. I think a lot of it has to do with ego. Unconditional love, my definition is, and I was placed in this position to where, in order to protect my little guy, I've got 4 boys, and in order to protect my boy who is now 4, I had to put myself in a position where it might hurt me very badly. In order to protect him, it was probably going to hurt me badly. I knew that his mother would probably try to hurt me badly, and she did try to hurt me very badly. Fortunately, it didn't work, but it still hurt. The whole situation hurt, but I came to terms with the fact that unconditional love means you want what's best for someone, even if it hurts you. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to say, and you don't really know if you can do it until you're doing it. There's only one way to find out what you're capable of, and that's to do it. And usually it's in really painful situations when you find out if you are capable of really exercising unconditional love. And I'm grateful that I gained that clarity. And so there's that component of it, to your credit and to the credit of most women. What I'm saying is most men, it would surprise me if most women didn't think just like you just said. I think like you just said, but I'm a single full-time dad of a 4-year-old. I did the potty training. It's all on me. So I, largely nowadays I identify probably a lot more with single moms and single dads, because most single dads I know just, they get them every other weekend, and they really are Disneyland dad. I am not Disneyland dad. I'm the dad that, wipes butts and boogers and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm that dad. and has 7 varieties of wipes in his backpack. But back to your question. So yeah, in my case with I'll go back to my first marriage. Actually, it was a show. I love my boys. I didn't understand because my ego was so fragile. Again, it became necessary in order for me to feel a level of self-importance to objectify my ex and even my kids. They were more like, they're not that way today, and they know that they're not that. Like, they know who Dad is today. Back then they didn't. And I was very different then. I worked my ass off to change. But I did that too. And then when people would come over, I would suddenly interact, because when an abusive narcissist is, everything is about what other people think. It's about perception, not reality. And it's ugly. I imagine it's probably ugly when you're the recipient of the abuse and you're seeing this. It's like everything is fake. Is there any part about you that's real? I would have said that about myself. She probably said that about me a lot in her mind. She may have said it to other people. I don't know. But she would have been right to say that. It's like, well, geez, why can't you do that when it's just us? Why can't you help out? Well, because that's a woman's job. What? That's a woman's job? Well, right now that's my job. All of it is my job. It's all my job now. So it was about perception, but again, what I think a lot of it does go back to is I firmly believe that unconditional love is much more intuitive for women than it is men, and which again is part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's okay I have no problem speaking about the truth of my past anymore. Well, that's not true. I'm pretty private, and I wouldn't say I enjoy it. But I'm probably gonna have to edit this part. That's all right. This question is, this one probably with relative to my boys, because I'm so protective of my children nowadays, and it's really embarrassing to think that I did that, especially surrounding my boys. Fortunately, someone once said to me that I was in a self-improvement course, and the speaker, he outlined the experience that he had with his kids. He had addiction issues, and for days and days, and he said that your children remember the changes you made more than the mistakes that you made. And I shot my hand up. I was like, I'm going to need you to elaborate, because I really want to believe what you said, but I think it's bullshit, because I've done some really bad things, and I want to believe that they're going to consider the dad's human, and they're going to think, they're going to focus more on that. And that's true. They have. Like, they've totally locked in on the changes, as opposed to the yuck of the past, which is convenient for me. But again, it would surprise me if victims of abuse didn't take that on like it was their fault, like it was them, or there was something missing with their kids. Like, why don't you love our kids? It's not that I didn't love my kids, it's that I just love myself more than my kids. I did not understand unconditional love. That was at the root of it.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. Fortunately, we're out of time. I'm sorry. Don't mean to cut it short. Trust me, we'll finish this conversation. There's a lot more to talk about. there's a lot more to talk about. Everything that was just discussed, even the part about even the part about kids, that runs directly in line with abuse and abusive behavior, mainly because in order to abuse somebody, you have to objectify them. And it wouldn't surprise me. I've never been abusive to my kids. I don't even use corporal punishment on my children. I haven't for over 10 years. But it wouldn't surprise me if that had a lot to do with why. The latest statistic I saw from the University of Oxford was 50% of people who are abusive to their spouse are also abusive to their children. 50%. I actually was surprised that it wasn't higher. I thought it would probably be higher. But it's still too high. It's still way too high. But again, when you get in the habit of objectifying a human being, it's a slippery slope, and nobody is exempt from it. You know, it's even the people that you love and are supposed to protect, and you're supposed to love more than anyone else in the world, they're not exempt from that objectification. And again, awareness is the first step. You know, being aware that, you know, that there's a problem, for one, and, you know, taking the steps to eradicate it. So at any rate, again, we'll have a follow-up conversation. You can look us up at PeaceGiverProject.com, also at PeaceGiver Project at Instagram, or obviously on Facebook. And we'll hope to see you all soon.